In today's episode of the Unveil Podcast, Brace Harris and I give you some more updates with regards to exciting developments from the Unveil Academy and the coach training curriculum. But then we get into a really meaty topic today. We are discussing spiritual bypassing. We discuss what this means within the podcast itself, but in short, we're talking about that attitude that, oh, it was all meant to be, and evil exists because it needs to for the goodness to emerge. These phrases that we hear spread around as a means of attempting to accept our reality, which actually do something very different. And we get into the weeds of all of the things that are necessary for truly healing within this podcast. I also take you on a journey through how holistic, integrated wellness must take place and how not everything is just about coaching. And there's so much more that we need to be aware of when we're dealing with whole human beings.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brace Harris.
And my name is Victoria Fenton.
And we are
Unveil.
Yay!
Yay.
Good day to you, madam.
Good day to you, kind sir.
Oh, isn't that? I love it because you do the accent and it's like, oh, I'm in a movie.
We also, it is Friday the 3rd of June, so we should also say, like, Happy Jubilee to Mrs. Queenie.
Yes.
My mum's just got back from a Jubilee birthday party, something or other. So there were beacon lighting last night. So
wonderful.
Hello, UK. We hope you are enjoying your four bank holiday weekend ridiculousness of like time.
Celebration. Yes.
And because, as we know, the Queen is Unveil's biggest fan. Yeah, she'll be listening.
She's got us on repeat.
Just going to take a minute from my Jubilee celebrations to tune into the Unveil people.
They have it on speakers for the entire crowd.
Broadcasting to all of the, the tea parties are, absolutely. So, how are you, Brace?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Yeah. We're doing
good.
A lot.
Yeah. Yes, we are doing quite a few things. We do have
sent me a message this morning, said the link in your bio is broken for your workshop. I'm like, I'm not surprised. I'm like breaking everything at the moment to build different things. And so I said, I'm literally trying to fix it at this moment in time. I'm sorry, I've broken it. To which he said, I'm not surprised you're breaking things with the amount of stuff you're churning out right now. And I'm like,
yes,
okay. It's a lot.
So, well, help me organize it in mind. What we told, what have we not? I know we did it live yesterday, and then we just kind of go. So it's interesting trying to keep organized in my own head. Okay, what audience knows what information? Yes.
Yeah. So the podcast audience do not know about the workshop, the founding member discounts for our curriculum. And the application process. So we can just do a little bit of a preview of all of that. It is on our Instagram Live. We did do one. So if you're looking for that, it's on the 2nd of June live that we did. So that's a sort of 25-minute update. But we can briefly talk about it now, if you would like to. Yeah,
let's do it. I guess start with the workshop. Yeah, July 16th, 17th. We'll be coming at you live from Austin, Texas.
And I did, by the way, have a contemplation after our live yesterday about doing, Brace knows this is not a surprise, about actually finding a venue and trying to do something in person. We decided that this time that's probably a little bit adventurous, given that we've got a month, we need to plan it. And, so probably not going to be actually in person this time. However, there is likely to be another workshop before September that I will do on my own. And if I'm here in Austin, I might do it in person. I don't know.
Love that.
This is me thinking out loud on our podcast. So, but so that's workshop. So Brace is coming to me.
Yes.
I'll be in a different house, just FYI. But yes, we'll be spend 2 whole days, and we're going to change the nature of it again. By the time you listen to this podcast, we will have updated the workshop webpage, and it will have the right information on. We can't tell you now because we haven't yet decided. So on Monday, when you listen to this, dear listeners, if you go to check my domain names. If you go to unveilacademy.com/events, that's the workshop page.
Beautiful.
So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you want to give kind of a brief synopsis, maybe not in detail, but kind of where the workshop is headed and how we've tweaked it to where we feel like it's going to be more beneficial for everyone that's a part of that experience?
Sure. So essentially, we are going to make the workshop much more applicable to the coach training curriculum that we just launched. So in essence, we are going to spend the weekend, not necessarily training, because that's what the Academy course is for, but allowing people to experience the Unveil difference and why we strongly believe in a holistic integrated approach to self-work. And so we are going to navigate through some physical well-being stuff, some coaching techniques and modalities. I was saying on our live yesterday, I'm going to make Brace, lead the kind of demos of things. I will do some human design stuff and allow people to really understand the impact. There will be a lot more interaction with the workshop attendees, so we'll be able to kind of like give you personalized stuff. And essentially the whole 2 days is going to be directed at really expanding people's awareness of the complexity of the whole human system, so that there is more, you have more ways to intervene and improve if you're looking for personal transformational growth.
Yes. So there's going to be a little bit of education, a little bit of practical things. You're going to get to experience what it's like to move through some of these techniques that we feel are very important. And like Victoria was saying, to feel the entire essence of the experience, because, when you're coaching or whether you're moving through things yourself, you want it to be safe. You want to feel secure because you're going into the most vulnerable places of your inner world. And we want to make sure, absolutely 100%, that those are extremely safe environments, because when you feel safe, you're more open for change and shifting. So we want to make sure that everyone experiences that.
Yes. And that's a big part of the Unveil difference as well, because that's literally everywhere in our company. We are very intentional about the safety. To the extent that, we have an assistant joining us next week, and it's our priority that she is as nurtured and as held within her work with us as anyone else. So, it's how we do everything. And it's, if you're at all interested in the coach training, come to the workshop for several reasons. One, it will be a really good experience of the two of us and the dynamic and what it's going to feel like to work with us longer term. Also, you will get access to us, and you can ask us questions about the training if you want to, because we're available for the whole 2 days for Q&A and all that kind of thing. But it also will show you what we'll be teaching. So whereas the workshop is going to give people a bit of a personal experience, if you're interested in becoming a coach, or if you are a coach but are interested in upskilling in the Unveil kind of way, this will be a very good on-ramp to that. And as part of the kind of additional things that we wanted to say about the Academy, last week in the podcast, we did announce it. We announced all the training curriculum, all that kind of stuff. Since that time, I have made the decision that we are going to run the first year as a founding member cohort, which means that there will be special things that no other cohort will get. We're also going to make it slightly cheaper so that people can jump in, get their feet wet for this first year with us, and spend some really good quality time, particularly with me. This will be the 1 year where I'm really all over the course and the curriculum and the teaching and the everything. So again, by the time this podcast is released, admissions are by application only, not because we want to make it difficult, but just because we want to get an idea of what time zone you're in so we can put the lessons in the right place. And also we just want a few kind of metrics on who's really interested in what we're doing. So that's why we ask for applications. And they will be open again on the Unveil Academy website. So it's unveilacademy.com/admissions, I think. I'll make sure the show note link's right. It's in the menu bar at the top anyway, click. But it will take you through the process and what to expect. Anyone who registers on the day of the workshop, the final day of the workshop, from the workshop, if you're watching a replay and you decide, this is for me, we will be very invented with names, but essentially what I'm calling it right now is summer school. So I will do a summer school kind of thing. There'll be a couple of things in August for people to just spend some time with me. That will only be with me because, as I said yesterday on our live, Bryce has something a little bit more important to do.
It's
like welcome
small
a human into the world.
And loud.
Right. Yes. As well as Riley.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's also small and loud.
And furry.
Yes. So, and we also have funding options available for people. I should be clear, and we didn't say this in the live yesterday, these are for people who are in the United States only. They're the only people who we can fund at this moment in time, simply because the credit referencing is done here. So that is a really good way to start training in this world. Because as far as I know, we're one of the few, if not the only, coaching institute which has allowed for funding to happen. So that essentially you, instead of paying what is for the full track, it's $15,000, instead of paying that up front, you can pay that at very low monthly installments over the course of 2 to 5 years. So you can be a fully fledged coach, working, earning money, as a coach, as an Unveil certified master coach, and still be paying off your course. And that is something that we really encourage people to explore if one of the barriers to entry for them getting into this world, either to work directly with us because the funding is available for our coaching packages as well, or to study, is money. So yeah.
Rock and roll. Very good. Yes. And the course starts in September.
Yeah, we're going to close registrations for the course on the 9th of September. And the actual first lesson is September 19th. And I will be in LA for that. So we will launch the course together. So I will be in LA at least from the 5th of September for a month. So we will be able to launch the course together.
Yes. And now to the juicy stuff. You guys ready for our insights, our deep introspective opinions on everything? Wisdom. That's the word. I was like, opinions. Interesting.
Are you ready for us to tell you what to think?
Yes. Okay. So today, and this was inspired. Yes, this is an inspired podcast episode.
Yeah,
Victoria was walking and listening.
I was walking and listening in hunt of puddles around the Texan streets. And I was actually listening to what was a really good podcast. And I want to preface all of this by saying everything that we do in Unveil is not about throwing shade on anyone. It's about adding more context. So you'll have noticed within our nervous system regulation podcast, we were like, we get what you're trying to say, but there's a bigger picture. Same for this podcast. Now, I was listening to a quadcast between, I'm going to try and remember all the people. So it's on Luke Story's podcast, which is the Lifestylist podcast. Anyone interested in our work would love that world. Not that I think you won't know of it if you're interested in our work. So it was on his podcast, and it was between him, Josh Trent, who is of Wellness, used to be called Wellness Force, but it's now called Wellness Wisdom. Who else? Cal Callahan, who does The Great Unlearn, which is another great podcast everyone should listen to. And a doctor that I didn't recognize the name of. Let me try and actually tell you. So these are all kind of like your... these people, they're in this world, they're in this personal development, self-improvement, really interested in all things health, well-being, consciousness, all of that kind of stuff. And Dr. John Lawrence is his name. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the 4 people. What I would say to everyone, particularly men, is if you're interested in this world, listen to these types of podcasts, because these are very connected, very strong examples of healthy masculine energy. And this podcast was a really great discussion. They were talking about rites of passage. I think Josh had just been into I was about to say the void. I don't really mean that. He'd been on like a quest. He'd been on one of these like Probably felt like the void, but he'd been on one of these personal quests, like retreat type things where you go into like the wilderness on your own, and they're really challenging, and they bring up stuff. The only part I want to comment on this podcast about is where they sort of ended up their discussion. Now, I know a little bit about the personal histories of some of these, not about others, but effectively they ended the discussion with this kind of reflection that everything is meant to happen. And they really ended this whole episode, which was really juicy with lots of great content, with this kind of very spiritually aware phrase of like, I am the person that I am today because of everything I've been through. And they were lending context to the hardships and really adding into that kind of all meant to be. And they were also talking about the existence of evil and how the dark stuff and the negative stuff in the world still is all meant to be, and it's all meant to be there, and it's all perfect and all of that kind of stuff. And I love that. It's great. I do think that they believed it. Now, I'm going to put spiritually bypassing in the title of this podcast because it's a bit clickbaity, but I don't think these guys were spiritually bypassing, and I want to make that really clear because I feel, because I know enough about them from listening to their kind of worlds, that they really have done the work. They've shown up, they've done the work, they've been through to get to the point of acceptance of the process. But what I feel like is a danger in our world is sharing the end point of a story without really taking the time to honor and acknowledge that you can't just top down this stuff. You can't just say, oh, everything happens for a reason, as a sort of glib acceptance, and expect that to mean something to someone who is still in the middle of it and who hasn't actually done the work yet. And so I wanted to open the conversation for us to talk about this nature of spiritual bypassing, and when people are just trying to get away from is probably a more accurate statement. Get away from that weighty energy by creating a phrase of acceptance, which isn't necessarily a felt acceptance. And I also wanted to create the space to actually share, okay, so if I'm not supposed to just get to everything happen for a reason, what's the route? What's the journey? What's the process? Because it is a process. And what I feel like is becoming incredibly common and incredibly clear to me is that the growth of like meme culture and GIFs and things which are like reduce complex humanity down to a sentence kind of do a disservice to those who are in the midst of stuff, because it's like, oh, I should just, keep calm and carry on, or, just believe that it's all perfect. And because that will change your belief potentially, but it doesn't change your lived experience. And everything that we do at Unveil is so supremely holistic. And we start from an understanding that we are physiological, energetic realities of beings. And so my body can't comprehend everything happens for a reason. My body doesn't comprehend this was meant to be, because my body experienced threat, danger, damage, all that kind of stuff. And it's not okay to dismiss that lived experience from the perspective of the mind, because that's like lecturing your own emotional realm and saying, well, just don't feel anything about it because it was clearly meant to be. It's not helpful. And that's where I wanted to start the conversation.
All right.
And we are going to get onto psychedelics as well, because I think there's an element of psychedelic work that goes into getting to that point of mystic acceptance, which isn't accessible or sensible for everyone. So, yeah. And the key thing to say is these four guys were not saying this from the perspective of change people, just change your mindset, change your life. That's not the perspective they were approaching from. They were just having a blokey conversation, well, fairly ascended blokey conversation, but it was just a conversation. But none of them are trained to work with people on the resolution of complex histories, traumas, etc., which means that in their delivery, they're kind of negating to recognize and consider a whole population.
How's everybody doing out there?
Brace is like, she's literally just moved to the place where all of these people live. Is she trying to make enemies?
No. Not at all. Well, it's a good point to bring up, because I think I mean, just everyone has a tendency to try to make it better. And it's easier for, I guess, the comforter to say, hey, let's look on the bright side. The intention is extremely positive, but Precisely. It's when you are the victim of said circumstances, or you are, and I use that word lightly, victim, when you are the one moving through it, someone saying, everything happens for a reason. You kind of want to, I have in the past punched somebody in the head. I'm like, don't you ever say that, because what happens is it denies the person their experience and their emotion and even the processing, the grief, the whatever they're moving through. It denies them that. Just that statement alone, it's like, get to the end point.
Right.
And once you get to the end point, then everything's going to be okay. And we all want that for somebody, but we, as in general, the population doesn't know how to help someone move from point A through all the stuff, A.1, A.2, A.3, A.4, all the way to B.
Yeah.
And so we just are like, hey, everything's going to be okay. Let's find the silver lining, and a lot of the times, and you'll see this in, funnily enough, in like memes and GIFs and things, is someone just sitting with someone else. Just sit there. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Just be and that action alone, actually, the person who's going through everything, they are seen in that moment. You don't have to do anything. Your presence lets them know that you understand that they are moving through something that they can't even process necessarily right now. And they don't need anything other than a safe space to feel all of that, and to know that there is no judgment. There is no trying to fix it. There is no any of that. And that is such a powerful, powerful place. And it's, we say it and it's like such a simple act, but the ability to see that the simplest thing that I can do is actually the greatest thing that I can do is actually really hard for us as human beings, because we want to make it so complex. We want to make it, more than, at least in my experience, we want to make it more than what is necessary. There's this beauty in the simplicity and the allowing. And that's actually really difficult for us.
Well,
easy to say, much harder to do. Yeah.
And it's really difficult because unless you've cultivated within yourself the capacity to be with yourself, you cannot just be with another human being. It's just simple physics. Yeah. So if you cannot sit with your own reality, allowing someone else's reality to just be becomes phenomenally difficult. So I love where Brace has kind of taken everyone from you are a regular human, what can you do? I think the realm that I want to discuss as well during this podcast is, okay, so there is complexity to resolving this. Like there is the simplicity of just being with the reality of the present moment. And then there is the complexity of like processing past traumatic stuff.
And yes. Oh, and I do want to caveat what I said. And I'm not trying to shame people who have done this, or their knee-jerk reaction is to be like, hey, let's look at the positive things, because your intentions are wonderful and beautiful and come from a deep, compassionate place of love. So I'm not trying to shame everyone. I think what we're doing is trying to open the way that we see moments and situations, and know that there are other strategies and methods that we can use, and how to see it on a multi-layered spectrum, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me because I find that we all expect more of ourselves than we should. We aren't taught how to be with emotions from the very first moment that we're born. baby cries, parents are like, shut up. It's just like, please be quiet.
Wow. Really?
Well,
shut up.
How many times have you seen a kid having a tantrum in a supermarket and, grocery store? And the mum is like grabbing it by the hand and saying, behave. It's like,
right.
They're having a massive emotional reaction. The response isn't behave, it's what's up. But we're too pressured by society. It's not the thing to have a child that has a meltdown in the grocery store. So we're not taught to be with emotional content. We're also not all trained professionals to deal with trauma and coaching and all those kinds of things. And yet we expect it of ourselves. We expect that we should be able to sit with someone's pain and know how to deal with it because we're a human being and we want to be compassionate. And literally we've set up an academy for a reason. Like, but people don't know how to be with other people's stuff and they don't know how to help. So there is... Yeah. Yeah. And
Well, just to reiterate your point from earlier, a lot of the times we don't know how to be with other people's stuff because we don't even know how to be with our own stuff. And it's like, and that's its own set of skills and probably even harder for us to do our own personal work than to help other people. I mean, there's a whole industry of, people who help others, but really don't necessarily know how to truly, truly help themselves. And in helping others, they can kind of bypass maybe some of their own things.
Well, and it's interesting because when I look at the coaching industry, and a lot of what we talk about at Unveil and at the Academy is essentially changing the nature of the coaching industry. And when I deeply reflect on the potential reasons for why it's so dysregulated as an industry to begin with, my sense is because it's filled with people with good intentions who want to help, who've been through something, who've learned a bit about how to go through something, but really haven't done the deep, intentional trauma resolution work, and are kind of have their little toolkit of what they do and are going off giving it to people without truly coming back to themselves. And so we have a very dysregulated population because people who want to be in coaching are very specific kind of people. We're typically people who've had some kind of hardship and come through it. Like it just is that world.
Yes, our mess becomes our message.
Yes.
To steal a Russell Brunson,
Yes, and our mess becomes our medicine for this kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that means that the reason it's so important to me to bring our academy into the world is because, yes, it is my mess becomes my medicine kind of journey, but I really do the work. Like I know I do the work. I invest money in trauma specialists because I know I have that history, and it is vital for me to be living as an example of the work that I do. And so a big focus for the year of the training that we do is encouraging people to be with themselves. And that's not, building nervous system resilience and how much can you handle. It's, is it okay if it's just a really quiet day? Is it okay if it's just there's nothing in the moment? And how do you resource yourself to get back to baseline neutrality and all that kind of stuff? And I'm a work in progress, as people will know if they listen to this podcast. There is absolute progress, but it's still process. So, and we will be getting my coach on the podcast in the next few weeks, month, something like that, to discuss more about this kind of slowness to the work. But even I would say, is there an endpoint? Like, what's the endpoint? What's the potential? And the potential of coaching work, particularly the kind of work that Brace and I do, and that we will be training our coaches to do, is allowing someone to be with more of themselves and more of life is the only goal of coaching. What are you running away from? What are you refusing to own? What are you kind of putting as your obstacles? Because the end result isn't, everything happens for a reason kind of thing. It's, I can be with myself. I can be with more of my totality of humanness. And getting there is a journey, and it isn't achieved by top downing it, going, there, dear, it's fine because it was meant to be. It's like, that doesn't help anyone. And
Yeah.
I will say very clearly, I have been guilty of this in my own world for a long time. Like there was a long time where I accepted things that happened to me from the perspective of knowing the reasons why and knowing what was behind them, but not from the level of somatically integrating the challenge that I went through in those experiences. And I absolutely know that everything happened for a reason. And like those 4 guys on that podcast, I'm saying that from the end point process. And for me, it's literally, and I actually said this to my coach the other day and I heard myself say it and thought, oh, that was interesting. My attempt to understand what the hell was wrong with my body and the science and the underlying problems that I've been dealing with has led me to discover everything that I now give to others and teach, which is great. But does that mean I need to accept what I've been through from a everything happens for a reason standpoint and just sit in it? No. I'm literally paying the guy to help me resolve / integrate, his word, integrate. That shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. And we can go to the spiritual realm of meant to be, true, but it's also true that it should not have happened. And until we can hold that paradox in our mind as coaches, as healers, as individuals who've been through stuff, we are not truly honoring the entirety of the human experience, because we're just trying to convince ourselves that something that we felt and something that genuinely shouldn't have happened is okay. And it wasn't. It isn't.
Well, it's interesting because while you were talking, the word acceptance kept popping into my mind, and then you said it. And then I was like, okay, because it sounds like, everything happens for a reason. Just accept, we accept, with understanding. And it's like, okay, how do we get from, instance to what acceptance truly is? It's not just accept it for the sake of accepting it, because that's the easy thing to do. It's like, okay, what does acceptance really, really mean?
Well, and just to say, I think that just because you literally just said, accept it just to accept it, what we're always trying to do if we're trying to spiritually bypass is escape. Everything that we're talking about today, it's the difference between being in this moment and trying to be in the next moment, trying to be in the next thing. And so if you're just trying to accept it because then it'll be over.
But it's not over.
You're coming from a trauma perspective because you're not in the present moment. It's this.
It's almost avoiding.
It's exactly avoiding. It's exactly what it is. Because if you're talking about the 4 trauma responses, one of the most common ones that we will use is flee. Like we want to run away, flight. So everything that we do to avoid the present moment is a signal and a symptom of trauma. Capital T is little t, whatever. There is something that is uncomfortable to you about being in the present moment, so you are running. And that oftentimes is super dangerous when where you run to is, oh, it's all okay.
And it's not always physically moving away from a situation or avoiding a situation. You flee inside in your subconscious. Like part of you goes away. I mean, even to the point of fracturing off, in certain individuals where they don't even remember the situation. It's like the inside physically, there is a fleeing in so many different realms of ourselves.
And just to be sort of scientifically accurate as well, we need to be careful when we say fleeing is always like the fracturing, because sometimes that can actually be freezing, and you actually freeze and don't remember. So the lack of kind of, we're not going to make this a science podcast all about the nervous system, but the nervous system is a multifaceted way of responding, and depending on which complex is activated, you'll do it a certain way, and there is a real tendency to do this when we feel like we need to be protected. And it's genuinely my belief that most people are walking around in life with protective patterns running the show and dominating. It's literally going to be the first session of it may not be the first session anymore. It will be covered in our workshop, where we're pointing out to people what patterns are. because we live from them. I live from them. You know, that I can talk about this because I know it from being both within this present moment state, but also from being out of it for a very long time. And I was lucky enough to actually have a physiological sense of it. I remember just before I had all my dental work done, I was with a osteopath, cranial osteopath, and he was like, can you describe the sensation of being in your body? And I said, literally, I feel like my life force is like here outside my body pushing forward, and I'm living from here forward, not within here. So yeah, it's really funny because it's not funny at all. I went to see a neurologist at one point. Yeah, neurologist. Middle of my illness, 2010 maybe, and described these sensations and kind of got this diagnosis of a dissociative personality disorder. And I was like, okay, you could put a label on it, or you can actually help me out, because I had nervous system dysregulation, literally diagnosable kind of dysautonomia is what they call it. Fun times. So it's these funny things where no, she says not joking at all, where we have this kind of negative judgment on a lived experience. Every time someone does that, it disincentivizes us to talk about the experience. So did I explain to anyone for many years about that sense? No, because when I said it to somebody, I got told that it was because I had a dissociative personality disorder. It took me years to then say it again. And it's this kind of world that we live in where it's like, you're not allowed to feel. Please don't feel. Do whatever you want, become super successful, but don't be a whole human being. And if you do feel, please get over it quickly.
Yeah, because feeling will disrupt your quote unquote success.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you won't mind us like just briefly talking about, we've been through so much in the last like even month. And that has been deeply distressing for both of us in certain ways. And Brace's default for me is, it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And we had to get to having a big kind of coming together moment where we actually were really honest about things this week, because it wasn't okay. Like, it was really stressful. And it wasn't helping either of us for Brace to be like, silver linings.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. He wasn't doing it because he was trying to affect the situation negatively. He was doing it because he genuinely thought that going, Victoria, I'm a bit stressed about this, would have added more onto my plate, made it more difficult for me, rather than us having an honest and genuine conversation where it was real. Because real, and we have the decision in our business that real is the only thing that matters. And yet still, we were both sitting in a place of not being honest with one another because it felt like the reality would actually hurt the other person. And we were both doing it. Like, it wasn't just Brace doing one thing. We were both doing it in different ways. And we're in the work. So you will get this wrong, guys. Like, you just...
Yeah. And what we realized, and I mean, I actually wrote this down because Victoria said it, is when we think that we were protecting the other, we're actually not.
Really not.
Even though the conversation was not the funnest conversation, there was healing going on while we were in kind of the tough, which kind of goes back to what the gentlemen were talking about on the podcast. It's like, you know, and I'm going to use heavy quotes on this, the evil is necessary. And we as human beings, we have to distinguish, I don't know if we have to, but we tend to distinguish good, evil, because it makes sense. We can rationalize that in our brains, and it's just in actuality things. And this is not bypassing. It's just this is what happened, and then we get to assign within ourselves whether that was good or bad, because something that is bad for you may be good for somebody else. So there's two contrasting truths going on there. So it's like, okay, well, what is the truth of that situation as well?
And I think this speaks to what you said earlier, which is like, so to explain our conversation, essentially, it was in our heated sort of I don't think triggered the right word, but kind of triggered states that both of us actually went to saying the thing that we've been trying to not say to protect the other. And it was in saying those things that we realized what the other was actually feeling, and we could come back to the point where we were like connected again. But because we were trying so hard to be good to one another, because we care about each other, we were not saying that. So we had to go to being triggered, because we would probably never have said it had we not come to blows. And that's the beauty of being able to be with the entirety and the breadth of a human experience. It's that we always know that we're going to come back to the table. It just is an agreement that we have. Both of us have almost walked away. But we come back. And the reason we do that is because we know that nothing is ever personal between the two of us. It's not about the other, it's about us. And we have created a safe container in which it can be very unsafe. And that is the key to coaching containers, to life, etc. It's like the container is safe and it will feel unsafe at times, but the container is still safe, which means that we get to feel.
Yeah, well, and it feels unsafe because we only have a human body to experience that through, and the human body is designed so specifically to keep us safe. So if there's anything, and it's kind of this weird dichotomy. It's like, everything happens for a reason, and I just said earlier that what happened is what happened. We assign good or bad to it. Because, and like our heated discussion didn't feel good. So you can say, oh, that wasn't a good conversation. Like what happened within the conversation was actually a really positive thing for us. But the way that we were experiencing it, we had to experience it through our physical body. So we're limited by what we can do. But knowing that we're limited, we know that it's not as intense or as quote unquote bad as the experience, the physical experience of it, because there's emotion and hormones and energy and all these things moving around that our nervous system is like, ah! Sorry, I'm like going on like a million different tangents.
But it all speaks to, why can't we just say everything happens for a reason? It's because the limitations of our physiology are built on primitive chemicals, which don't believe that to be true. So
yes,
there are threat sensors that we have that will prime us to react to threats, whether real or perceived. Both of us in our conversation were experiencing very real threats, and perceived threat, and threat that didn't exist, that like we made up. So our bodies were in chemical overwhelm into that state of stress. If either of us in that moment had gone, oh, it's okay, it happens for a reason, we're fine, it's complete denial of the reality of what we're living through.
Right.
And, it sucks, but it's real. And that's why that is exactly why I want to train coaches the way I want to train coaches, because where Brace just went to with his language in terms of hormones and chemicals and the nervous system and all that kind of stuff, super relevant, but coaches don't understand a lot of that stuff. So the bedrock of physiology is a really important thing to be aware of when we're understanding, hang on a second, how is this client living this experience? And for me, one of the biggest missing pieces in coaching is that absolutely you can influence physiology in multiple different ways, but physiology is also influencing everything else. And somatic practitioners are great because they're dealing with the body and the chemicals and all that kind of stuff, but they don't know if that person is on medication or has a structural thing in their posture, which is going to change things. Did it come from trauma? Has it arisen because of complexities of somatic influence? Potentially. Is it still a lived-in experience and a problem right now that actually would need resolving before you can actually get to the point where you can do the inner work? Absolutely. And it's simpler to do it all. And so whilst I love what Brace was saying earlier in terms of it's really simple, just sit there and be with someone, that's great for in the moment stuff. When you're thinking, I want to work with people and I want to help people heal from stuff, I couldn't be an effective professional if I didn't also understand the physiology that my clients are living and breathing through.
Will you do me a favor? You gave a really, really great example. There was a gentleman who couldn't lift his arm. Was he a soldier or something?
Okay,
and he couldn't lift his arm. Yeah.
So I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is going to be where the emotional history has affected the physiology. And therefore an emotional solution was absolutely essential. And then I'm going to give you another one where the physiology is in no way going to be supported by emotional solutions. We'll start with the first one because it's the one that people kind of won't necessarily understand. So yeah, it's an example that is in, I want to say it's in Peter Levine's, oh, you've got my copy, in An Unspoken Voice, but it might be in another book. So I'll try and double check that. But essentially, guy, a frontline worker, a fireman, I think, was off duty.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
There was a car accident as he was exiting a grocery store, and the car crashed, and in his natural instinct as a first responder, as somebody who knows how to deal with situations, did what he always does when he attends an actual scene when he's on the job, was reach in and turn the ignition off, just in case there's any electricity which can then ignite the car. As he did that, he leaned over the driver and literally with his hand tried to turn off the ignition. At the moment of him turning off the ignition, he noticed that there was a young boy in the passenger seat who'd been decapitated by the airbag. Nothing happened for several weeks. And then over time, he lost the mobility of the arm that he actually reached in to turn the ignition off with. Now, he didn't need a chiropractor. He didn't need anything, because what had happened in that moment is his body had felt all of the shock of seeing a young boy injured, dead. But he hadn't been able to process and metabolize the physiological trauma response in that moment. So all of that chemistry gets stuck as an energy within the body, and for him created a shoulder issue, an arm issue, where he literally couldn't lift his arm above. What he needed was to integrate that memory into his somatic reality and allow himself to have the trauma response that he needed in that moment. And it's very common in people who are trained to override their trauma responses, think military, think, these kind of first responder people, because it's not safe for them to have an emotional reality in the moment when they're trying to go into a burning building or doing the scary things. So there is a lot of need for people in those settings to have that kind of support, because for them, it is advantageous to halt their natural, innate trauma responses. And this guy had simply done it in an off-duty setting, totally forgotten about it from that perspective, because these things take a while to manifest physiologically if they're emotionally instigated. So that's one example where he needed to emotionally resolve that interruption of trauma patterning in his body. A different example where no amount,
Well, let me ask you, what was the end result? Like he did the work, they went in,
and very quickly
found the memory.
And I think it might actually have been in Raja Selvam's Practice of Embodying Emotions book instead. I can't remember, but it's not about going in and doing parts work. We will teach parts work in workshops and things like that, but this isn't a fragmented part that you need to speak to as a protector. It's an energy that's been stored. So finding that kind of shock memory and the emotion associated with it, but also allowing the body to do what it needs to do. So the biggest problem in that story is that he did not break down at the sight of this decapitated child. He very coolly and calmly turned off the ignition and waited for the paramedics to arrive. If he'd have screamed, done something, allowed his fight, flight, freeze, fawn response to come, he would be very unlikely to have that frozen shoulder retained. And that's the thing. He didn't need to have an emotional therapy session on it. He just needed to feel the reality of that emotion, I don't remember the full resolution. I think he probably cried and did that sort of stuff. But very, very quickly, these things just evaporate when the emotional held tension is resolved, which is why having an integrative, holistic toolkit is super important, because, and knowing how to use it, because the work that guy needed wasn't, let's go and find the part of you that was like disconnected at the time of the accident. And it wasn't, let's go and talk to your inner child who needs something. He needed emotional embodiment work. He needed to allow that sensation to expand and to feel all of the feelings around that moment. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people can go into the trembling response. Sometimes people can just have a scream and release all the energy. It's somatic work. And there is a lot of power in allowing things to dissipate after the insight. So it's my belief that somatic work benefits from cognitive understanding. So I think that the multi-layered impact in that situation was him finally remembering and understanding the onset, because you suddenly mm-hmm. then dissociate from the intensity, because you're kind of like, oh, I know where this came from. It's why for me, the majority of my work in my illness was finding the diagnosis. And actually the diagnosis in and of itself, whilst absolutely useless, it was that paved the way for my eventual healing, because my brain suddenly wasn't in, oh my God, what is this? What is this? Is this me? Is this shame? Is this that? There was no doubt anymore. So that cognitive understanding, it's why I spend such a long time with my clients telling them what's happening, because it helps. Like, it takes away a layer of something. And then the emotional embodiment work, and then allowing the trauma response to complete, and then it doesn't need to stay. Because mm-hmm. it's literally that shoulder was staying, because it's like, don't turn off any more ignitions because you're going to see dead children. It's kind of what the body's saying. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So for my example, where absolutely no way can you do anything, I find it hilarious how women think that, I mean, hilarious is the wrong word, worrying, how women think that taking contraceptive medication, which many women do just by default, isn't affecting them somewhere, somehow. So I have often dealt with people with hormonal issues, often where they're dealing with emotional stuff, but we can't get to the emotional layer. And why can't we get to the emotional layer? Well, one, it could be a trauma thing. Don't want to go there, don't want to feel it. But also, if you're literally altering your emotional landscape because you're taking artificial hormones for 28 days of every month, it's impossible. Like, some layers of access to things cannot be done when you are taking medication. Psychiatric medications, same. So these things are really important to know, so you understand the landscape in which you are playing as a coach, as somebody who works with people. And it's not that things are impossible if women are taking hormonal medication. It's just you have to understand where you can end up, what you can do. Like, if somebody's really malnourished, which I deal with a lot in my certainly dealt with a lot in my clinical practice, there is no point in me trying to calm down their fear senses, because they're literally starving, which is the biggest signal in the body for panic, stress. We need to find food now. And so most of my medical career was spent explaining people's nervous systems to them, so they had realizations and rationalizations for their behavior and their choices, particularly people who have food problems, whether that's typically what we refer to as emotional, or whether it's to do with more chemically driven, although I would argue that that's also emotionally driven. But it's very common for people to go into starvation and binge cycles, particularly if they've got food problems and they can't understand it. It's like, why would I do this? It's like, well, it's obvious. Like, I did it myself. It's like, I do not want to eat food because it hurts and I'm sick every single time. So why would I go towards food? And then I'm starving. So why am I then going to the fridge and trying to eat? Because I know food hurts. Well, because I'm starving. So my body's being directed by the lowest common denominator. And it's always going to be the things that are materialistically threatening, not socialization cues or externalization. It's going to be starving, nutrient levels, sheer calorie levels, safety principles. So money, housing, accommodation, all that kind of stuff. So understanding where the landscape is, like I spoke with one of my clients this week, and sure, we penciled in to do some parts work because I wanted to dig in and find some stuff. And she's had a terrible 10 days, barely eaten. And I'm like, practical, let's sort out your diet. Because there's no point in me going into emotional parts work and subconscious patterning, because everything at the moment is she's starving. Which is why really helping people requires real education.
Well, let me ask you, on the other hand of that, I know that fasting and like really depleting the body in order to have a deeper understanding is sometimes common practice in certain ceremonies and things like that.
Yeah.
How is that different? Is it different?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So all of these ritualistic practices that people do, this is a nice segue to bring us back around to psychedelics on the podcast, which we will go to after this. All of these ritualistic things that people do, they are a combination of external circumstances. So usually there's wilderness or darkness or unsafety of something involved, and depletion from a nutritional perspective. They stack the chemistry. So it's very much more possible to find yourself when you have been pushed to an extreme of deprivation, etc., because the body basically doesn't have anything left in order to do anything. So what happens when you go into ketosis and you start to starve yourself and fast is effectively your body starts to use fat as fuel, but you also start to produce what we call ketones. Ketones and cortisol tend to track together, so you get more stressed. And the whole point of that is very advantageous. The body goes, I need food, so I'm going to have more stress chemicals. It's the body's very intelligent. For short amounts of time, so for these 4-day kind of vision quests, that's the word I was looking for vision quests, or 7-day things, that is very possible in the right settings to set the psyche in a different place, because you're changing the inputs, you're changing the regularity, you're also giving yourself different chemicals, and it can allow for insights and awakenings. And yet, same too with cold exposure and stuff like that. What you're doing is you're stacking the chemistry and you're literally putting your body into stress. And it can be what we call eustress, as in positive stress, good stress. Exercise is a good example of that. But it's all about who you're recommending that to, in what setting are you recommending that happen, and what is the support for it afterwards. So I mentioned it before on the podcast, but Wim Hof, Iceman, Breathing Man, has just had a series on the UK TV where he took celebrities into the cold and did a lot of cold exposure stuff. And they were talking about trauma, and they were talking about healing your trauma, and it was just so wrong to my trauma-informed brain, because essentially what he was doing was pushing people's physiology into sufficient enough stress so that they had stressful memories come up, they had stress, and they were having what we call catharsis, so release moments, all accompanied by you put your body in freezing water and you come out, and then you have to warm up. So your body does all of the things it does to warm up, and you get basically a semi-euphoria state. And you think that's because of the cold. And actually it's because your body's gone, it's cold, I need to warm myself up. It's just chemistry. Now, in those moments, can positive things happen? Yeah, you can see things and know things and feel connected in a way. Same with psychedelics. It's like you are stepping into a space of altered consciousness to see differently, to experience different things, all of that stuff. And breath work. Again, you're changing the oxygen levels in your body, and you are having what we call a catharsis, a release. You see the breathwork videos on Instagram and everyone's bawling their eyes out, and there's just huge stuff. I don't personally believe anything's being processed in those moments. Release, maybe, but what's ultimately being released is a ton of adrenaline and noradrenaline, dopamine, eventually, endorphins. It's like doing a workout and you feel great afterwards, but it's hellish to go through. The difference between breath work is that, it does feel hellish while you're going through it, but all you're doing is breathing. And it's like, this is not healing. I mean, it's different experiences, but particularly when it comes to the psychedelics, and all of those 4 guys on that podcast are proponents of psychedelics, it's like the whole point of being a human is to be here now. we've been saying that in this moment right now, can you get really into now by going into an altered state of consciousness, which takes you out of the now and out of this present moment? I mean, maybe.
Well, the way I rationalize it is the plant medicine journey, the breath work, reveal understandings that you can then bring into the now, that you wouldn't have access to, that can help you process the now and can help you get to that healing that you may not have had access before. So they're more tools to reveal deeper understandings that you would not have had access to unless an extreme situation was there.
Right, potentially. And that's definitely, this is not me.
Yeah, that the actual ceremony or practice isn't the thing that heals you. It gives you the insight, and then you take the insight and then you apply it, and then healing is available as long as it's guided and done in a proper setting. You can't just stop there.
Yes. And I do think that you're accurate in terms of pushing your body into a different chemical state, whether that is by using an exogenous substance, using an internal substance, or, fasting or whatever, will reveal different elements of yourself to you. My biggest question that I always have is, at what cost? So there is so much evidence for the danger and the damage of taking yourself to the place of where you get an insight when you are under physiological stress. People who have what they call bad trips, people who really struggle to integrate, people who have dark nights of the soul for many days after taking all these substances and that kind of thing. It's like your chemistry goes into a very specific place. And you could, if you're not careful, create a new trauma map based on that specific place. And depending on which substance you've taken, you could develop a really negative relationship with that neurological state. So particularly if you're taking something that which is sort of similar to falling asleep, this is the reason why people who struggle with sleep post these trips is because the neurochemistry of this scenario is very similar to when they're about to go under the effect of the psychedelic or the medicine or whatever it is. And so the body goes, oh no, we don't want to go there because it was terrible. And all they're trying to do is sleep. So everything in this world is contextual. It's who are you making the recommendation to? Who are you saying go do this? And in what setting? And I don't mean setting from a psychedelic, it has to be like a shaman, whatever setting. I mean, what is going on in their life that they are going to return to? And is that the right scenario for doing some of those more difficult things? And that's a really big question. And it's why we do. I mean, I'm in Austin. Like, I could probably walk out my house and trip over a mushroom. And we do know people who facilitate all of these sorts of things. And we are happy to recommend, but we know to whom and why.
Yeah. And I think that's super important. It's like, if you decide to do this, get with really amazing, well-referenced, well-practiced practitioners, that if there is a darkness that moves in, or if there is some other stuff that comes up, that you have a guide and someone there to move you and coach you and support you through that. I think that's
about the
huge.
Facilitator, it's the aftercare as well.
Afterwards as well. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's another, I think it's easier for people who've done a ton of psychedelics and been to altered states of consciousness where they kind of witness God. And, if you do 5-MeO-DMT, it's kind of the God molecule or whatever. Again, very easy to get to, everything happens for a reason. Everything's meant to be. Because you've been in that place of altered consciousness, which was phenomenal. And you see the link and you witness consciousness. Amazing. And was your body really there? Like, did your body really have that lived experience of feeling the everythingness of perfection? No. So you have to do more than escape this reality if you want to truly descend and be in this reality, with all of this reality, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the everythingness of it. None of that is to criticize the four gentlemen on Luke Story's podcast, simply because I know that what they said came from a very grounded place, a very in this reality place, a very centered perspective of having been through a process, all four of them, amazing personal, professional journeys. All I wanted to do was add context for people, because there is more than just getting to the place of acceptance. And you asked me a question earlier and then I didn't answer it, which is like, what do you do? The reality is you start to notice is the only thing that needs to happen. So if you start to notice yourself more and become more aware of who you are, what's happening in every moment, without attaching meaning or judgment, just statement, I'm experiencing, I don't know, cold feet right now. I'm not going to, oh, that means the AC is too high or low or whatever. I'm just, my feet are cold. Neutral statement. And if you can get to that with your emotions, I'm experiencing sadness. Not try and find a meaning for it, not try and find that. You're just allowing yourself to be with more of what is, without feeling the need to discount it by saying, oh, but it's fine.
Just be with whatever's there. Yeah.
It's been a very meandering podcast today. I feel like we've covered a lot of territory.
Yes. Well, par for the course. Par for the course. I was like, why is there a little bit of I apologize, studio audience. No, this is what we do. We go.
Yeah, no, this is we do. We do go everywhere.
It's so fun.
Yeah, and it's all connected. And I think it's that relevance of understanding the holistic nature of we as human beings. And as soon as you grasp that you are a complex, multi-system, multi-layered organism, you really understand why we blather on all the time about integrative holistic healthcare and caring for people. Because any practice, any practitioner that isn't at least aware of what they don't know and aware of what they're not covering and aware of what they're not seeing, they're not going to be maximally supporting you. And I'm not saying everyone needs to become an Unveil coach and it's the only way to do it, because that's clearly not true, although we'd love to train you and have you in our world. But I am saying that if you are in this world and you know that there's bits of this that you don't know, just build a network, so that if you've got a client that could do with something in one of the other things, allow them to access it, because it's relevant and it's the right thing to do.
Love it.
Speaking of which, applications are open now. Come learn with me. Witness my crazy brain in real life.
You will not be bored. Trust. You will not be bored. It'll be a fun time. Definitely.
The funny thing is that everyone used to say about Brace, like if Brace was in people's life, they wouldn't be bored. And now Brace is like, oh my God, there's someone who's crazier.
So you're in for a roller coaster ride of joy and learning and insights and stuff and all the things. Ta-da.
Very true. And entertainment from Brace.
I love to entertain. It's one of those things.
I don't think that's news to anyone here.
Child. Sometimes I'm proud of it. Sometimes it's a source of shame. So that's still stuff that I have to get into.
Right. And should never be, Yeah. Anyway, it's way too.
That's another podcast.
Right. Yep. Although we should do a podcast on shame.
We haven't. Or have we?
I don't think so.
Have we not?
Mm-mm.
We've done so many.
This is episode 33.
Is it? I thought we were in the 40s.
No, 33.
My goodness.
Though that is
awesome.
7 months of podcasts, if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Is there anything else that we're missing that we need to get into?
No, except go listen to that podcast. I will tag it in the show notes and I'll tag the guys simply because it was a great podcast. Like, it was a really good podcast. I just got super triggered at the end. I was, guys, stop. But they're also great people to follow. So absolutely make sure that you are on top of, particularly Luke Story. If you want like a physiological support person, he's great. And the doctor has just written a book all about melatonin and sleep, and the fact that melatonin is more than just about sleep. So
love it.
Thanks.
All right. Well, for now, my name is Brace Harris.
And my name is Victoria Fenton.
And we are
Unveil.
Stay informed with all things Unveil. Sign up for the newsletter at unveilenterprises.com/sign up.